The sun was setting over Seoul, painting the city in shades of orange and pink. The streets buzzed with life as people hurried home after a long day at work or school. In one corner of the bustling metropolis stood a tall building housing the National Space Research Institute. Inside, two figures sat hunched over monitors, their faces illuminated by the glow of screens filled with data streams and charts. Jin-Woo adjusted his glasses as he leaned closer to the screen. His dark eyes scanned the numbers quickly, searching for patterns that might explain the strange signals they had been receiving from space. Beside him, Hye-mi tapped away on her keyboard, her fingers flying across it like a pianist playing a complicated piece. She paused occasionally to jot something down on the notepad beside her. For weeks now, the Institute had detected unusual bursts of energy coming from deep space. At first, Jin-Woo thought it was just interference from cosmic phenomena, a supernova, or perhaps an asteroid collision. But as the days passed, the signals grew stronger and more frequent. Something about them felt deliberate, almost artificial, and tonight they were unlike anything either scientist had ever seen before. "Jin-Woo," Hye-mi said suddenly, breaking the silence between them. Her voice carried a hint of urgency. "Look at this!" He turned to see what she was pointing at. On her monitor, a series of spikes lit up in sharp succession. They weren't random. There was rhythm to them, almost like Morse code. Jin-Woo's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Was someone or something trying to communicate? Before he could respond, alarms blared throughout the room. Red lights flashed overhead, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Both scientists froze, startled by the sudden noise. Another researcher rushed into the lab, his face pale. "You need to see this," the man stammered, gesturing toward the main observation deck. Without hesitation, Jin-Woo and Hye-mi followed him. As they entered, the large dome-shaped chamber, gasps echoed around them. On the massive screen displaying live feeds from telescopes positioned around the globe, a sight none of them would ever forget unfolded. A fleet of ships, hundreds, maybe thousands, had appeared near Jupiter. Their metallic surfaces shimmered, faintly under the distant sunlight, making them look otherworldly. Each vessel was enormous, dwarfing even the largest human-made spacecraft. It wasn't just their size that stunned everyone. It was their design. Sleek yet menacing, these ships bore no resemblance to anything humanity had created. And then came the message. A low hum filled the air, growing louder until it became a deafening roar. Words began to form, not spoken, but transmitted directly into their minds. The language was unfamiliar, but its meaning was crystal clear. "We have declared war." Panic rippled through the room. Some researchers dropped their equipment, while others frantically tried to shut off the transmission. But the message kept repeating, relentless and cold. Jin-Woo felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't some distant threat anymore. It was real, immediate, and terrifying. Outside, chaos erupted. News outlets picked up the signal almost instantly, broadcasting it worldwide. Phones buzzed with alerts, social media exploded with speculation, and governments scrambled to make sense of what was happening. Within minutes, military forces were put on high alert. Air raid sirens wailed in cities across the globe, sending millions of people fleeing for shelter. Back at the Institute, Jin-Woo struggled to focus amidst the commotion. He knew they needed answers, and fast. Turning to Hye-mi, who looked equally shaken, he asked, "Can you isolate the signal? Try to pinpoint where exactly it's coming from." She nodded, already typing furiously. Minutes stretched into hours as they worked tirelessly, ignoring hunger and fatigue. Finally, Hye-mi let out a triumphant cry. "Got it!" she exclaimed. "The signal is originating from the lead ship in the fleet. I think we can decode parts of it." With renewed determination, Jin-Woo joined her. Together, they pieced together fragments of information hidden within the transmission. What they discovered left them both speechless. These beings called themselves the Vorthak. They hailed from a dying planet, their resources depleted beyond recovery. Now they sought new worlds to conquer, and Earth was next. Jin-Woo clenched his fists tightly. For years, he had dreamed of encountering intelligent extraterrestrial life. Never in his wildest nightmares did he imagine it would come like this. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. If anyone could figure out how to stop them, it was him. But how? As dawn broke over Seoul, the reality of the situation sank in deeper. Streets once alive with laughter and chatter now lay eerily quiet, abandoned cars lining the roads. Soldiers patrolled neighborhoods, their weapons drawn. Families huddled indoors, praying for salvation. Fear hung thick in the air, suffocating hope. Yet amid the despair, sparks of courage ignited. People banded together, sharing supplies and comforting strangers. Social media flooded with messages of unity and resilience. Humanity refused to give up without a fight. At the Institute, Jin Woo stared out the window, watching the sunrise. His mind raced with possibilities. There had to be a way to defend Earth, to protect everything he held dear. Beside him, Himi placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll find a solution," she said softly. "Together." Her words gave him strength. No matter how daunting the challenge ahead, Jin Woo vowed to stand firm. The Vorthak may have declared war, but humanity would respond, with every ounce of ingenuity, bravery, and spirit it possessed. Little did he know, this was only the beginning. The days following the Vorthak's declaration of war were a blur of fear, confusion, and desperate action. Governments around the world convened emergency meetings, trying to make sense of the alien fleet hovering near Jupiter. Military leaders scrambled to prepare for an attack that seemed inevitable. Meanwhile, ordinary people grappled with the terrifying reality of an enemy they couldn't even comprehend. In Seoul, Jin Woo and Hayami barely left the National Space Research Institute. They worked tirelessly, analyzing every scrap of information they could gather about the Vorthak. The decoded fragments of the transmission revealed chilling details. The aliens viewed Earth not as a home to living beings, but as a resource-rich planet ripe for exploitation. Their message was clear. They intended to take what they needed, regardless of who stood in their way. As the scientific community raced to understand the invaders, news broke that one of the smaller ships from the Vorthak fleet had detached itself and was heading toward Earth. Its destination? Busan, South Korea's second-largest city. Panic spread like wildfire. Thousands fled the coastal metropolis, clogging highways and railways. Soldiers were deployed to maintain order, but the sheer scale of the evacuation overwhelmed them. Captain Dae-hyun, a seasoned officer in the Republic of Korea Army, found himself thrust into the center of the crisis. He had spent years training for combat scenarios, but nothing could have prepared him for this. Standing on the rooftop of a command center overlooking Busan, he watched through binoculars as the alien craft descended silently from the sky. It was massive, its sleek surface reflecting the sunlight like polished steel. The sight filled him with both awe and dread. "Orders are to establish contact," his superior said over the radio. "Try to communicate. Show no aggression unless provoked." Dae-hyun clenched his jaw. Communicate? With creatures who had already declared war? It sounded absurd, but orders were orders. Gathering a small team of soldiers equipped with translation, devices, and recording equipment, he approached the landing site cautiously. The air buzzed with tension as they neared the towering vessel. When they arrived, the ship loomed above them like a mountain. There was no visible door or hatch, just smooth metal stretching endlessly upward. Then, without warning, a section of the hull slid open, revealing a dark interior. Out stepped 3 figures. They were tall, at least twice the height of an average human, with elongated limbs and featureless faces, covered by what appeared to be helmets. Their movements were fluid yet mechanical, sending shivers down Dae-hyun's spine. "Stay calm," he whispered to his team, raising his hands. In a gesture of peace, one of the soldiers activated the translation device, which emitted a series of clicks and whistles meant to mimic universal languages. For a moment there was silence. Then one of the Vorthak tilted its head, almost as if studying them. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Without any provocation, the aliens raised their arms, and drones erupted from the ship. Dozens of them, small and insect-like, swarmed the humans. Before anyone could react, the drones unleashed beams of searing energy. Soldiers screamed as the blast tore through their ranks. Dae-hyun dove behind a pile of rubble, heart pounding in his chest. His mind raced. Retreat wasn't an option, not while his men were still fighting. "Fall back!" he shouted into his radio. "Fall back to the barricades!" But it was too late. The drones moved with terrifying speed, cutting down anyone in their path. Buildings crumbled under their assault, fires spreading rapidly through the streets. Civilians caught in the chaos ran for their lives, their cries echoing in the smoky air. Dae-hyun gritted his teeth and fired his weapon, though he knew it was futile against such advanced technology. The Vorthak weren't here to negotiate. They were here to destroy. Back at the Institute, Jinwoo and Himi monitored the situation anxiously. News footage showed the devastation unfolding in Busan, each frame more horrifying than the last. When reports came in that the alien scouts had withdrawn after causing widespread destruction, Jinwoo felt a mix of relief and frustration. Relief, because the immediate threat had passed, and frustration because humanity remained powerless against the invaders. "We need to figure out how their technology works," Jinwoo muttered, pacing the lab. "There has to be a weakness we can exploit." Hyemi nodded, her eyes glued to the screen displaying data collected during the attack. "Their weapons operate on principles we don't fully understand. But I noticed something interesting. Their drones seem to rely on some kind of quantum entanglement network. If we can disrupt that, maybe we can disable them." Jinwoo stopped pacing and turned to her. "Quantum entanglement? That's theoretical physics. How are we supposed to build something based on that?" "I didn't say it would be easy," Hyemi replied, a determined glint in her eye. "But it's our best shot. We'll need help, though. Engineers, programmers, anyone who can contribute." With renewed purpose, Jinwoo reached out to colleagues around the world. Scientists and technicians responded eagerly, driven by a shared desire to protect their planet. Within hours, makeshift labs sprang up in universities, research facilities, and even private garages. People pooled resources, sharing ideas and blueprints online. For the first time since the Vorthak's arrival, there was a flicker of hope. Meanwhile, Captain Dae-hyun returned to base, battered but alive. He carried the weight of failure heavily on his shoulders. Images of his fallen comrades haunted him, their faces etched into his memory. As he sat alone in his quarters, staring at the wall, he made a silent vow. He wouldn't let another city burn. Not on his watch. Days turned into weeks as humanity braced for the next move from the Vorthak. In Busan, cleanup crews worked tirelessly to clear the wreckage. Refugees crowded shelters, their eyes hollow with grief and exhaustion. Yet amid the ruins, stories of resilience began to emerge. Neighbors helped neighbors rebuild. Volunteers distributed food and supplies. Even in the darkest moments, the human spirit refused to be extinguished. At the Institute, progress was slow but steady. Jinwoo and Hyemi collaborated with experts from various fields, piecing together theories and testing prototypes. Late nights blurred into early mornings as they pushed themselves to the limit. Despite the odds stacked against them, they refused to give up. One evening, as Jinwoo reviewed the latest simulation results, Hyemi joined him with 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and leaned against the desk, watching the numbers scroll across the monitor. "We're going to do this," she said firmly. "We have to." Jinwoo took a sip of the bitter liquid and sighed. "I just wish we had more time." "So does everyone else," Hyemi replied. "But wishing won't change anything. All we can do is keep moving forward." Her words struck a chord deep within him. Time was indeed running out, but giving up wasn't an option. Humanity had faced countless challenges throughout history, and somehow it had always endured. This time would be no different. Across the globe, preparations continued. Militaries fortified defenses, civilians volunteered for training programs, and governments coordinated strategies. Every corner of society mobilized for the fight ahead. Though fear lingered, so did determination. The Vorthak may have declared war, but humanity was ready to respond, with courage, ingenuity, and an unyielding will to survive. And somewhere, deep in the void of space, the alien fleet waited. The world was changing fast. The Vorthak's attack on Busan had left a scar not just on the city, but on the collective psyche of humanity. Governments, once divided by borders and politics, now found themselves united by a common enemy. In Geneva, Switzerland, leaders from every nation gathered for an emergency summit under the banner of the newly formed Global Defense Initiative, GDI. It was a historic moment, humanity putting aside its differences to face an existential threat. Jinwoo stood nervously in the conference room, surrounded by powerful figures who were pinning their hopes on him. His reputation as one of the brightest minds in astrophysics had earned him a seat at the table. Beside him sat Hee-mi, her youthful energy masking the weight of responsibility she carried. They weren't politicians or military strategists. They were scientists thrust into a role neither had asked for. Yet here they were, tasked with leading humanity's technological response to the Vorthak invasion. "We need solutions," said General Park, the head of South Korea's armed forces and a key figure in the GDI. His voice was firm, leaving no room for excuses. Not theories, not ideas. Solutions. Jinwoo swallowed hard. He knew what was expected of him. Hee-mi nudged him gently, offering silent encouragement. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. "We believe we've identified a potential weakness in the Vorthak's technology," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Their drones, and possibly their entire fleet, rely on a quantum entanglement network to function. If we can disrupt this network, we may be able to disable their weapons systems." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some looked skeptical, others intrigued. A representative from the United States leaned forward. "How long will it take to develop such a weapon?" "It depends," Jinwoo admitted. "We're working around the clock, but building something capable of interfering with quantum mechanics is complicated. We'll need resources, manpower, and cooperation from everyone here." The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. This wasn't just about funding or materials, it was about trust. Nations that had spent decades competing against each other would now have to share their most advanced technologies. Secrets would have to be laid bare if humanity stood any chance of survival. To everyone's surprise, China was the first to volunteer. "We have engineers and facilities that can help," their delegate announced. "Consider them yours." Other countries quickly followed suit, pledging support in whatever form was needed. For the first time in history, humanity truly acted as one. With the backing of the GDI, Jinwoo and Hee-mi assembled a team of the brightest minds from around the globe. Engineers, physicists, programmers, and even amateur inventors joined the effort. Labs were converted into round-the-clock operation centers, filled with people fueled by caffeine and determination. Blueprints covered walls, equations filled whiteboards, and prototypes lined shelves. Failure wasn't an option, not when the fate of the planet hung in the balance. Among those recruited was Subin, a daring test pilot who had earned a reputation for pushing boundaries. She had been dismissed from the Air Force years ago for reckless behavior, but her skills were unmatched. When the GDI put out a call for pilots willing to test experimental aircraft designed to combat the Vorthak, she didn't hesitate to sign. Subin arrived at the training facility ready to prove herself. Her jet-black hair was tied back in a ponytail, and her sharp eyes scanned the hangar where engineers were assembling sleek, futuristic planes. These weren't ordinary fighter jets. They were equipped with cutting-edge technology based on Jinwoo and Hee-mi's research. Each plane housed a prototype quantum disruptor, a device intended to interfere with the Vorthak's entanglement network. "Welcome aboard," said Captain Dae-hyun, who had been assigned to oversee the program. His tone was professional, though. There was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He remembered Subin from her days in the military, a brilliant pilot whose ambition often got her into trouble. "You'll be flying these birds in simulations first. Get familiar with how they handle." Subin smirked. "I don't need simulations. Just point me toward the sky." Dae-hyun raised an eyebrow. "This isn't a game, Subin. One wrong move and you could fry yourself, or worse, give away our position to the Vorthak." She sobered slightly, nodding. Understood. As the days passed, Subin proved herself invaluable. Her instincts in the cockpit were razor-sharp, and she quickly mastered the controls of the new aircraft. During one simulation, she discovered a flaw in the quantum disruptor's deployment mechanism that could have caused catastrophic failure during actual combat. Engineers worked overnight to fix the issue, grateful for her keen eye. Outside the labs and training facilities, ordinary citizens rallied behind the GDI's efforts. Factories retooled to produce components for the quantum disruptors. Farmers donated food to feed the workers laboring day and night. Artists painted murals of hope on bombed-out buildings, reminding everyone why they were fighting. Even children contributed, organizing fundraisers and writing letters to soldiers and scientists expressing their gratitude. In Seoul, Jin-Oo and Hye-mi barely slept. Their relationship evolved from colleagues to partners bound by a shared mission. Late nights turned into early mornings as they pored over data, debated strategies, and celebrated small victories. There were moments of doubt, of course, times when the enormity of the task threatened to overwhelm them. But they always found strength in each other. One evening, as they sat together in the lab, Hye-mi broke the silence. "Do you think we can really do this?" she asked softly. "Beat the Vorthak, I mean." Jin-woo hesitated before answering. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we have to try. If we don't, who will?" Hye-mi nodded, her gaze fixed on the glowing monitor in front of her. "Then let's keep going, for everyone counting on us." Back at the training facility, Subin pushed herself harder than ever. She flew countless missions in simulated environments, honing her skills and testing the limits of the experimental planes. Each flight brought her closer to understanding their capabilities and their weaknesses, though she rarely showed it. The pressure weighed heavily on her. She couldn't afford to fail, not when so much depended on her performance. Captain Dae-hyun watched her progress with growing admiration. Despite their rocky past, he respected her determination and talent. After one particularly grueling session, he approached her as she climbed out of the cockpit. "You're doing well," he said simply. Subin wiped sweat from her brow and gave him a tired smile. "Thanks. But well isn't going to cut it when the real fight comes." "No," Dae-hyun agreed, "but you're getting there." The bond between them strengthened as they trained together, united by a shared sense of purpose. They weren't just soldier and pilot anymore, they were comrades preparing for the battle of their lives. Across the planet, humanity braced for what lay ahead. The Vorthak fleet remained ominously stationed near Jupiter, watching and waiting. Every satellite, telescope, and radar system was trained on them, searching for signs of their next move. Rumors spread of another assault imminent, though no one knew where or when it would strike. In the midst of uncertainty, acts of courage and kindness continued to shine. Refugees from Busan rebuilt their lives in new cities, supported by strangers, who welcomed them with open arms. Volunteers risked their lives to deliver aid to areas still recovering from the initial attacks. Musicians played concerts in ruined squares, their melodies rising above the rubble like defiant cries of hope. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was fighting back. Against all odds, people refused to surrender. They adapted, innovated, and persevered. And in laboratories, factories, and training grounds, preparations for the ultimate showdown accelerated. For Jin-woo, Hye-mi, Subin, and Dae-hyun, the stakes had never been higher. They were pieces of a larger puzzle, each playing a crucial role in humanity's defense. Together, they embodied the resilience and ingenuity that defined their species. The Vorthak may have declared war, but humanity's response was clear. They would stand united, unyielding, and ready to protect their home. And somewhere beyond the stars, the invaders watched, unaware of the storm brewing beneath Earth's skies. The calm before the storm was brief. Across the globe, humanity held its breath, waiting for the Vorthak's next move. The alien fleet near Jupiter remained eerily still, as if biding its time. But everyone knew it wouldn't last. When the attack finally came, it was swift and merciless. It began with a sudden surge of activity in the Vorthak fleet. Ships detached from the main group and accelerated toward Earth, their trajectories aimed at major cities. Tokyo was the first to fall. The sky above the city lit up with blinding flashes as beams of energy rained down from the invaders' ships. Skyscrapers crumbled like sandcastles under the relentless assault. Streets filled with chaos as people ran for shelter, desperate to escape the destruction. New York followed soon after. The Statue of Liberty stood defiant for a moment, her torch reaching skyward before collapsing into the harbor under the weight of an alien blast. Fires erupted along Manhattan's skyline, consuming everything in their path. Paris met the same fate, its iconic landmarks reduced to rubble within minutes. The Eiffel Tower toppled, its iron frame twisted and broken. The world watched in horror as news outlets broadcast live footage of the devastation. Refugees poured out of affected cities, fleeing with whatever they could carry. Roads became rivers. Of cars and trucks, many abandoned when fuel ran out or traffic jams turned deadly. Military forces scrambled to evacuate civilians while preparing defenses for the next wave of attacks. But conventional weapons were useless against the Vorthak's advanced technology. Humanity's best efforts seemed futile in the face of such overwhelming power. Amid the chaos, Captain Dae-hyun led ground troops into battle once more. This time, he wasn't alone. Armed with experimental quantum disruptors developed by Jin-woo and Hayami, his unit fought back with renewed determination. The devices weren't perfect. They overheated quickly and had limited range, but they offered a glimmer of hope. When activated, they created temporary disruptions in the Vorthak drone's coordination, giving soldiers precious seconds to strike. Subin took to the skies in one of the prototype planes, her heart pounding as she soared above the battlefield. Below her, explosions tore through the landscape, lighting up the night like fireworks. She focused on her mission, targeting enemy ships with precision strikes. Her plane's quantum disruptor hummed softly as she locked onto a massive Vorthak cruiser hovering over Cairo. "This is Subin," she said into her radio, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I'm engaging the target now." "Copy that," Dae-hyun replied from the ground. "We'll cover you." With a deep breath, Subin pulled the trigger. A burst of energy shot from her plane, striking the underside of the cruiser. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship shuddered violently, its sleek surface flickering as if caught in a malfunction. The disruption spread, causing nearby drones to lose control and crash into each other. Cheers erupted among the ground forces as they seized the opportunity to push forward. But victory came at a cost. The Vorthak retaliated fiercely, unleashing waves of reinforcements to overwhelm the defenders. Subin narrowly avoided being hit by a retaliatory blast, her plane jolting as she banked sharply to evade the attack. Sweat dripped down her face as she struggled to maintain focus. Every second counted. Back at the command center, Jin-woo and Hayami monitored the battle anxiously. Data streamed across their screens in real time, showing the effects of the quantum disruptors. While the devices worked, they weren't enough to turn the tide completely. The Vorthak adapted quickly, finding ways to counteract the disruptions. "We need more time," Jin-woo muttered, frustration evident in his voice. "If we can improve the disruptors, make them stronger, there isn't any more time," Hayami interrupted, her tone sharp with urgency. "People are dying out there right now. We have to do something." Jin-woo clenched his fists but nodded. She was right. They couldn't afford to wait. Together, they relayed instructions to engineers on the front lines, guiding them to tweak the disruptors mid-battle. It was risky. Any mistake could render the devices useless. But it was the only chance they had. On the ground, Dae-hyun fought alongside his men, his rifle blazing. As he took down drone after drone, his unit pushed deeper into enemy territory, determined to hold their position until reinforcements arrived. Smoke stung his eyes, and the roar of explosions drowned out all other sounds. Yet through the chaos, he remained focused. Each step forward brought them closer to survival, or annihilation. As dawn broke over Cairo, the tide began to shift. Thanks to Subin's daring maneuvers and the combined efforts of ground forces, the Vorthak cruiser suffered critical damage. Its engines sputtered, sending it spiraling toward the desert below. The sight sent a surge of hope through the defenders. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity scored a tangible victory. But the celebration was short-lived. As the surviving Vorthak ships retreated temporarily, the battlefield fell silent, except for the crackling of flames and the groans of wounded soldiers. Exhaustion settled over everyone like a heavy blanket. Subin landed her plane, her hands trembling as she climbed out of the cockpit. Dirt and soot covered her face, but her eyes burned with determination. Captain Dae-hyun approached her, his uniform torn and bloodied. "You did good out there," he said, offering a rare smile. "Really good." Subin shrugged, trying to play it cool, but the exhaustion in her voice betrayed her. "It's not over yet." "No." Daehyun agreed. But we've bought ourselves some time, and maybe, just maybe, we've shown them we're not as weak as they think. News of the victory spread quickly, lifting spirits around the world. In Seoul, Jinwoo and Hyemi received updates from the front lines, their hearts swelling with pride. Their work had made a difference, not enough to end the war, but enough to give humanity a fighting chance. Yet even as people celebrated, the reality of the situation remained stark. Cities lay in ruins, millions were displaced, and countless lives had been lost. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but amidst the pain and suffering, something remarkable had emerged. Unity. Strangers helped strangers, nations shared. Resources and individuals sacrificed for the greater good. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and refused to break. For Jinwoo, Hyemi, Subin, and Daehyun, the fight was far from over. They knew the Vorthak would return, stronger and angrier than ever. But for now, they allowed themselves a moment of quiet reflection. They had stood together against impossible odds and won a small but significant victory. In the distance, the sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light over the scarred landscape. Despite everything, life persisted. Buildings smoldered, but people emerged from shelters, ready to rebuild. Soldiers tended to their wounded comrades, offering words of comfort and encouragement. Children clung to their parents, tears drying on their cheeks as they looked toward the future. Humanity had taken its first steps toward reclaiming its home. The Vorthak may have declared war, but humanity's response was clear. Resilience, courage, and an unshakable will to survive. Somewhere beyond the stars, the invaders plotted their next move, unaware of the strength they had awakened in their opponents. And on Earth, the survivors prepared to meet them head-on. The victory in Cairo was a spark of hope, but it also came with heavy costs. The battlefield was littered with wreckage, burnt-out vehicles, shattered drones, and the remains of brave soldiers who had given their lives to hold the line. Smoke hung thick in the air, mixing with the acrid smell of destruction. For Captain Daehyun, standing amidst the ruins felt surreal. His body ached from exhaustion, his mind heavy with grief for the comrades he'd lost. Yet, there was no time to rest. The Vorthak would return, and humanity needed answers. Subin sat on the edge of her plane's wing, staring at the horizon. Her hands were still shaking slightly, though she tried to hide it. She had faced death countless times during the battle, but this was different. This wasn't just about skill or bravery. It was about survival. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. If the quantum disruptors failed again, if she made one wrong move, millions more could die. Back at the command center, Jinwoo and Hyemi worked non-stop, analyzing data recovered from the downed Vorthak cruiser. Engineers had salvaged parts of its advanced systems, hoping to uncover secrets that could give humanity an edge. The pieces were unlike anything they had ever seen, smooth metallic components that seemed to hum faintly with energy. As Jinwoo examined them under a microscope, he couldn't help but marvel at the alien craftsmanship. It was both beautiful and terrifying. "Look at this," Hyemi said suddenly, pointing to a holographic display showing schematics of the cruiser's internal structure. "Do you see it? There's a central hub connecting all the systems." Jinwoo leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. "You're right. It's like a brain, or a hive mind." Hyemi nodded eagerly. "Exactly. I think this is what controls everything, the drones, the weapons, maybe even the entire fleet. If we can disrupt that, we might be able to cripple their operations." A flicker of excitement sparked within Jinwoo. They had found something, a potential weakness, but exploiting it wouldn't be easy. The central hub appeared to be located deep inside the mothership, the largest and most heavily guarded vessel in the Vorthak fleet. Getting close enough to disable it would require precision, stealth, and sacrifice. "We need to plan carefully," Jinwoo said, turning to Hyemi. "If we make a mistake, it could mean disaster." She met his gaze, her expression resolute. "Then let's not make a mistake." Word of the discovery spread quickly through the GDI. Military strategists gathered to discuss how best to use the information. Captain Daehyun joined the meeting, his input valued due to his first-hand experience fighting the Vorthak. When Jin Woo explained the theory about the central hub, Dae-hyun immediately grasped its significance. "It's risky," he admitted, "but it's our best shot. We'll need someone skilled enough to infiltrate the mothership and plant a device capable of disabling the hub." All eyes turned to Subin. She stood quietly in the corner, arms crossed, her face unreadable. When Dae-hyun called her name, she straightened, stepping forward without hesitation. "I'll do it," she said firmly. Dae-hyun frowned. "It's too dangerous. You'll be flying into enemy territory alone." "And if I don't, who will?" Subin shot back. "I'm the best pilot you got. You know it." He opened his mouth to argue, but Jin-woo intervened. "She's right. We don't have another option." Reluctantly, Dae-hyun agreed. Over the next few days, preparations for the mission intensified. Engineers worked tirelessly to modify the quantum disruptor into a portable device powerful enough to disable the central hub. Pilots practiced formation flying to create diversions, while ground forces planned coordinated attacks to draw attention away from Subin's approach. As the team finalized their plans, tension filled the air. Everyone knew the stakes. Success meant crippling the Vorthak fleet and buying humanity precious time to regroup. Failure meant certain doom. On the eve of the mission, Subin found herself unable to sleep. She wandered outside the base, gazing up at the stars. The vastness of space had always fascinated her, but now it felt ominous. Somewhere out there, the Vorthak waited, preparing for their next assault. She clenched her fists, determination hardening her resolve. She wouldn't let fear stop her, not when so much depended on her success. Captain Dae-hyun joined her after a while, his presence silent but comforting. "Nervous?" he asked gently. "A little," she admitted. "But I'm ready." He studied her profile, noting the steely glint in her eyes. "Just promise me one thing," he said. "Come back alive." Subin glanced at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. Then she smiled faintly. "I'll do my best." The morning of the mission arrived, crisp and clear. Soldiers lined the runway, saluting as Subin climbed into her plane. The modified quantum disruptor sat securely in the cockpit beside her, its blinking lights a reminder of the task ahead. As engines roared to life, she took a deep breath, focusing on the mission. "Good luck," Jin-woo's voice crackled over the radio. "We're counting on you." "Roger that," Subin replied, her tone calm and steady. With a final salute, she throttled forward, lifting off the ground and soaring into the sky. Behind her, squadrons of fighter jets launched in perfect formation, creating a diversion to mask her approach. Below, ground forces launched simultaneous assaults on key targets, drawing the Vorthak's attention. The plan relied on split-second timing and flawless execution. Any misstep could doom the entire operation. Subin navigated through the chaos, weaving between explosions and enemy fire. Her heart raced as she closed in on the mothership, its massive form looming larger with each passing second. Closer now, she activated the cloaking device installed on her plane, rendering it nearly invisible to Vorthak sensors. Sweat dripped down her face as she guided the aircraft toward a docking bay near the ship's core. Inside the mothership, the atmosphere was eerily quiet. Automated defenses scanned the area constantly, searching for intruders. Subin moved, cautiously, avoiding detection as she made her way deeper into the alien vessel. The corridors were dimly lit, the walls pulsing faintly with an otherworldly glow. Every step brought her closer to the central hub and closer to danger. Finally, she reached her destination. The hub was housed in a cavernous chamber, its surface covered in intricate patterns that shimmered like liquid metal. Subin exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Carefully, she placed the quantum disruptor on the floor and activated it. A low hum filled the air as the device began to emit waves of interference. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed overhead, bathing the chamber in an ominous glow. Subin cursed under her breath. They knew she was here. "Disruptor online," she reported over the radio. "Get me out of here." Outside, Captain Dae-hyun led a team of soldiers toward the mothership, determined to extract her before the Vorthak could capture or kill her. Their path was fraught with obstacles, drones, automated turrets, and hostile aliens, but they pushed forward relentlessly. Time was running. Out. Back in the chamber, Subin fought to stay alive. Waves of drones swarmed around her, firing relentlessly. She dodged and weaved, using every ounce of skill to evade their attacks. Just as she thought she couldn't hold out any longer, reinforcements arrived. Dae-hyun burst into the room, his rifle blazing as he cleared a path to her position. "Let's go!" he shouted, grabbing her arm. Together, they sprinted toward the exit, the disruptor's hum growing louder behind them. The central hub began to malfunction, sparks flying as its systems overloaded. The entire ship trembled violently, threatening to collapse around them. "This way!" Dae-hyun yelled, leading her toward an escape pod. They barely made it inside before the doors sealed shut. Seconds later, the pod ejected from the mothership, hurtling through space as the colossal vessel erupted in a blinding explosion. The shockwave rocked nearby ships, sending them spiraling out of control. On Earth, Jin-woo and Jaime watched anxiously as reports streamed in. When confirmation came that the central hub had been disabled, cheers erupted in the command center. Humanity had dealt a critical blow to the Vorthak fleet, crippling their ability to coordinate attacks. But the celebration was bittersweet. The cost of the mission weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Lives had been lost, sacrifices made, and though the Vorthak were weakened, they were far from defeated. For now, however, humanity could breathe a little easier. The invaders had been shown that Earth was not an easy target. In laboratories, factories, and shelters, people continued to rebuild, driven by hope and resilience. Together, they vowed to stand firm against whatever challenges lay ahead. And somewhere beyond the stars, the remnants of the Vorthak fleet regrouped, their fury burning brighter than ever. The war was far from over, but neither was humanity's fight to survive.